Welcome back, everyone, to Ladder League recaps and predictions. This is Week 1 recap and Week 2 predictions. I am joined here by my first guest of the year, Saber. Welcome, Saber.
So what's up, guys? Exciting first week. Ready to get into it.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to start the recap here. We had phenomenal matches in Week 1. I don't want to spend too much on the recap like I did in the LCQ1 video, or the LCQ video. That was crazy. So I'll start off right away. I'll go top to bottom here, starting with Rung 1. It was a Dragon, Zach, Jared matchup, and this was a phenomenal race. From the get-go, it was like two good Godfrods. Jared happened to, have a little bit of a struggle on Godfrod, so he fell behind early and just like really wasn't able to come back pretty much this entire race. Well, Zach had some crazy issues in the mid game and the late game with DSE and some unprecedented Coruscant deaths that we've never seen. And Dragon nearly PBing and having just a phenomenal run one. Him taking the win and actually getting the 1 seed, locking himself in the top 8. And honestly, just my thoughts on the match were Dragon. I didn't think, I thought, okay, Dragon, maybe his peak would be, his best possible race would be somewhere around there. And then he probably just will lose to Zach because Zach's just a really consistent runner. But Dragon just super, super impressed me in this race. Zach, I wouldn't say underwhelmed me because there were some crazy disasters, but obviously, he was the favorite to win, didn't do it. And then Jared, his race inconsistency, which I did mention last week, kind of falters him here. And, he sees the worst of it. Saber, what did you really think of this matchup that happened?
Yeah, I think we were all kind of questioning how well Dragon could do in the league just with a no reset race setting. But I honestly think from watching some of his streams, he usually just kind of goes live and can rip runs. I'm pretty sure when he got record a little bit ago that it was basically like his first attempt that he did when he started upstream. So his ability to just get these paces going very quickly was able to translate. So not what I was expecting. I was expecting that we would see Zach take the first seed, but very impressed by Dragon. I think it's very well deserved, and some unfortunate time loss for those other runners. And Jared, especially, I think, just showing a little bit more of the nerve side of things going into a race setting, especially when you compare it to some of the other runs that we're going to get into. Not even, beating out like 3 or 4 other runners who were able to get sub 220s. So definitely a little disappointing from him. I think we'll obviously see him lock in as the weeks go on though.
Yeah, I guess that begs the question, especially Jared, who kind of had the kind of performance that I guess Dragon had the standout performance, but Jared with kind of an underwhelming performance, especially for him. Going into
Yeah.
kind of the future weeks, there's I guess the question of is Jared gonna be able to recover from this? I think it's totally doable. And maybe was this just like a week 1 nerves thing? Was this like a couple of disasters that won't happen again? I know there was the Jabba's helmet loss, which is really crazy. If you guys haven't seen the clip of that, watch that back. I guess Saber, what is your do you think Jared will be able to rebound from this in the next coming weeks?
Obviously he has the skill to compete at a high level. It really just depends on his ability to lock in a race setting. Because even comparing him to you and Laser and even like Colton, just putting up these really, really solid times, there's a chance that if he puts up a performance like this again, that he'll end up going even further down into the ladder. Whereas I think people were probably expecting him to get one of the top probably 2 or 3 seeds for this year. So it is very unfortunate, but I think eventually he'll be able to lock in. I still obviously think he's going to qualify for top 8, but it can't be good for his mental, especially after winning last season, just not putting up a great first race performance. Obviously, he had a busier week, graduated from college, which is awesome, and also helping with the production side of Ladder League and helping with commentary and whatnot. So he had a lot going on. That could play a factor as well, just general busyness. So I think we'll definitely see an increase in his performances as the weeks go on.
I'm totally in agreement with you. I think there's a lot going on for Jared, right? He's in graduation week. He kind of had to fit this match in and the 1 or 2 day slot that he could even do it in. He's not playing that much. There's some week 1 nerves. I think a lot of factors played into the reason why Jared had a bad time. And honestly, I still think he's like a candidate to get a top 3 seed. It might be a
Yeah.
more difficult path now, but it's definitely he's still a candidate. And I think his placement prediction, if you've done those, Jared 4.5 under over was like a really hot pick. I'd say like not the under or the over was hotter than each other. I think just a lot of people pick like believe in him or don't believe in him, and I think a lot of people might have been swayed one way or another from this week 1 race. And I guess just to briefly bring up Zach before, I guess yeah, there's so much praise on Dragon. I'd love to talk about him a lot, but it's just like he's in there. We won't see him for a while, so I don't feel like we're gonna talk about him that much anymore. The
Yeah.
next time we'll see him is literally in the 1 versus 8 match. Obviously, I'd love to talk a lot about Dragon and praise him, but I do want to quickly talk about Zach because like this was obviously an underperformance in Zach's eyes because I think in the Charlie Goldman form he was the consensus #1 by every person who picked in that. Um, I think we'll probably both be in agreement that this race didn't really rock him that much. It didn't really, and I think he's still like going to be a favorite to qualify any week from here on out. Do you kind of agree with that? He's going to be the favorite in almost any match from here on out.
I mean, we'll talk about it a
Yeah,
bit more
yeah.
later, but I have been hesitating a lot on this rung one for this next
Okay,
week.
yeah, yeah. No,
Just based on today's performance for Bricko, and but I think in general, yes, a lot of people are gonna have faith in Zach just due to his history with his tournament performance. I do think a lot of people are going to favor him, but it is unfortunate, and even with this match, I mean, I'm pretty sure that if he hadn't taken like a couple of deaths in Coruscant, like he would have been right up there with Dragon. Like it actually could have been a really
yeah.
close race without a couple of very silly mistakes. But obviously, like just having faith in him getting a top seed and performing well in the tournament as a whole, absolutely, that's like not a doubt in anybody's mind.
I guess one last tidbit of information before we go into Wrong Tuesday, so I don't want to spend an hour on the recaps, is just Zach has actually, I believe, played maybe less or about the same amount of tournament matches as Dragon has. Because Dragon played so many last year, and Zach last year, or in his Ladder League Season 1, literally played his first match qualified, played 2 matches in the top 8, and then his Season 3 tournament, he played, and he won the tournament. But he didn't play that many matches, so he doesn't have like a ton of tournament experience, which is just interesting to note considering, he's just been so dominant.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on to Rung 2. Bricko, Evan, Anorak, and this was just a phenomenal race. This actually just wrapped up a couple hours ago. I had the honor of being able to watch this one, and this one was really exciting. And obviously, the big thing that happened is Bricko gets like a 40-second PB in a race, wins the match. Throughout the rung, he was like behind early on, but he took over in episode 4 and didn't let go. Or I guess episode 6, I would say. He took over and didn't let go of that lead. Well, Evan and Anorak kept making, mistake here, mistake there. Maybe, I don't know if I would attribute it to nerves. I would almost say Evan would maybe even was starting to get even frustrated towards the end of the match as well. And, kind of just a surprising performance from Evan, in my opinion, because I thought he would be a little bit stronger in the later game. And then Anorak, I'm not going to say it was expected that he was going to falter in the late game, but I think he was a little bit below these 2 runners in terms of, like, no reset consistency. And it kind of showed, but honestly, Anorak did outweigh my expectations by being up there despite maybe having some nerves throughout the entire race. And then it was really just a few disasters that led him. Like, I don't know if you saw the Hoth Battle bomb what happened, where he
It did,
towed the
yeah.
bomb into the rock. That probably cost 30 seconds. And that would have flipped his result to second place. So I definitely do want to point out that Anorak did have a good race despite getting third. I guess, what are your thoughts on this match in terms of like underperforming, overperforming expectations from these runners?
Yeah, I saw like the last 2 episodes of the match, and I did pick Evan to win the match. I think a lot of people did. Just in general, his performance in a no reset race setting has just always been very, very dominant. Um, but I think Bricko is just one of those people. You know, you can just always kind of have faith in him. Like when he
Mm-hmm.
performs at a high level, he performs at a very, very high level, getting the best time out of anybody within the first week. Very, very impressive. Obviously, getting a PB in a ladder league race is not something that you would expect to happen. But the fact that he can just like kind of pull that out and then put himself in the top rung now makes him feel a little bit more threatening, I would say, to these other runners that he's going to be against. Obviously, rematching against Evan and facing against Zach. I would say overall, though, not that it was a bad performance by everybody. It really turned out to be a really good race. It was kind of just the difference between like good and standout is really
Yeah,
what it came
that's a
down
great way
to.
of putting it.
Yeah, like you could have expected that Bricka would probably be in a no reset setting closer to what Evan and Anorak got. Kind of a mid 218 would be something that you would expect, but really, and even like I saw it in the last couple of episodes, just split after split, he was playing incredibly well. Helped a little bit, of course, by like an amazing Falcon Flight boulder, but saving a lot of time in his PB and CCT, and ultimately just kind of locking in just a very, very good time. So standout performance from him, and definitely not like a bad performance from either of the runners. Just, when somebody's playing at such a high level, there's not really much that you can do in these higher rungs.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it because it's like Evan and Anorak's times aren't even bad. They're still good. They're
Yeah.
still solid. Whether I think they'll think otherwise, right? Because when you get those times that are, a bit far off your PB, there's always going to be mistakes that stick out in your mind. But generally, like for a no reset race, Evan and Anorak did not have bad times whatsoever. So like, I think it's a great way of putting it. Spricko just had an unbelievable standout performance that makes Evan and Anorak maybe look like they had bad runs, and they totally didn't. Um, but yeah, I guess going forward, Anorak does have to go to rung 3 now, which seems a bit harsh considering, the time he got here and how big that second place was for Evan just to be like that. I mean, yeah, Evan's in the same spot as Bricko, right? I did not end up leapfrogging anyone, so even though Bricko won, Evan's still able to be in that same exact position that Bricko's in right now. So it's gonna be, game on again next week. Let's just keep chugging through these. Rung 3, there really isn't too much. There is definitely stuff to talk about here, but not as interesting of an actual race that happened. Oh yeah, Saber, do you want to take this one real quick?
Yeah, so I was hosting this match on the back end with some of the production side of things, so I was able to watch the whole thing. The biggest thing that happened, of course, is Justin's absolute disaster that happened in Pod Race. Um, Not only missing Godfraud, but then also clipping back inbounds and being backwards. I believe it was during going for like a modified lap two, just normal pod fraud, with not a great setup. Ended up backwards, having to restart the entire level, which really just sealed his fate. But honestly, he ended up being like more closer to like Wazip at certain points in the middle of the run. But then as time went on, Wazip just kind of played a little bit more solid. I still don't think Wazip is too happy with his time overall, but Justin is definitely showing the rust that he's had because he hasn't been playing as much as anybody else, really. I think everybody else has been putting in quite a bit more practice, even in these last couple of months. And like especially for you and Wazip, Wazip has been improving at an incredible rate, and you've been PBing recently. For Justin, I mean, the last couple months he's been playing a lot of Minecraft, and I know has only really like returned to the game in the last like 2 or 3 weeks, like
Yeah,
very,
it's
very
very recent.
recently. Yeah, so that definitely was showing, and obviously a very, very strong performance from you. I actually thought there was a good chance that we would see a leapfrog happen based on the rung two match. They just, playing a little bit more solid, but still like just you had the most kind of solid run out of these runners, and Justin with just a huge underperformance. Obviously, like you can attribute multiple minutes of that to pod race, but even if you take that out, I don't think he's going to be happy with what his time would have been otherwise. But I kind of want to direct a question back to you, just because
Hmm.
we can get kind of like the runner side of
Yeah, yeah,
things.
for sure.
And like, were you like watching the race on the stream? Did you know anything, or was it not
So
until like you
that
finished the run that you knew
yeah,
that you had gotten first
actually
place?
this changed a lot during the race because initially I was like, all right, I'm gonna check at the end of 4 and I'm gonna check at the beginning of 5. And then
Hmm.
as I had a bad start, right? I missed lap 1 Godfraud, and then I also like a disaster on Thief that got over 5 minutes. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna focus. Whatever. My brain was like, I'm probably losing. I'm just gonna focus and play as best as I can. I played really well through 2 and 4, and then well, actually, it was at the end of 2. I just had briefly chatted about Zach with the race, just on my frustrations, right? I was just like, oh man, did
Hmm.
you see that Thief? Did you see that pod race? Like, what the heck, man? And then he spoiled with the screenshot the episode 2 exits, and my eyes were like, what? And I was like, oh, well, I guess, because I guess I'll tell you my mindset was because I got a 40-58. I was like, that's not a great episode 2 exit, but even if Wazip and Justin had really good episode 2s and like low 40s, that I'm within a minute, I'm still in it. I can just keep playing strong, and I can, and I'm likely to maybe pass them up if I keep playing strong. But then when I saw the episode 2 exits, I was like, whoa. And I kind of realized at the moment, like, I don't even worry about it because, you know, I still have to, like, I could potentially leapfrog. So I tried to still put together the best run I could from there on
Right.
out. But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, I watched this match back after because it's my own match. I do definitely like to watch back to see, where I could have improved and I guess where my competitors had faltered. And like, I guess Wazip, I don't want to write off his. I said I don't want to write it off completely, but you can kind of write off this performance as like this is his first ever tournament match. There's definitely nerves in there. Like, the expectation for Wazip in this match can't be very high just because it's like his first ever tournament match. So, and you could see that with that really bad episode 2 exit. And like you said, he
Yeah.
kind of just played solid throughout the rest of the run. Obviously, there's still errors and stuff, but you could see him sort of adjusting to the match as it went on. And, obviously he's not going to be happy with his final time, and it's mainly because of the early game stuff, but I think there's positives to come for Wazip in the future in Ladder League. And then I guess to
Yeah.
talk about Justin, obviously I got to talk to him actually directly after the match, and he had mentioned if you take away 3 splits, which I believe Padres, Spaceport, and one other one I don't know off the top of my head, he said if you took away those 3 splits, it would have been a 220. So I'm not too worried about Justin because it's the sense of like he's rusty right now. That was his first run back in months. I'm very debatable on why you would put that as your first ladder match as your first one back in months. But I do have a positive outlook that because he's going to be in the ladder for a while, it'll be very unlikely for him to drop out of the ladder. That he will
Yeah.
just keep improving and he will be a threat for top 8 for sure. Um,
Yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to bring up about him, the last thing I wanted to touch on is it is actually like even though everybody is expecting him to do well and survive quite a bit longer, I think a lot of people are expecting that his line is kind of right around the 8 seed, which would be, the wild card match. And so it is unfortunate because for this race performance, getting 226.11, like it's gonna affect his overall average
oh, for
throughout this whole
sure.
ladder and might actually like kill his chances of even being in the wild card match, where that's kind of where people would expect him to ultimately land by the time everything's said and done.
Yeah, and I guess to like kind of give you some info because I got to talk to him after the match, and he said he like obviously he wants to qualify as early as possible, but if he has to go through the wild card, he was mentioning that best time, the best tournament time, was going to be his path rather than average, which I think he can also acknowledge that with that performance, average is going to be a very tough path. Especially, I guess we can transition now to the rung below with that outstanding performance from Flaming Laser in rung 4. I can briefly talk about this match because this match was kind of crazy off the bat where everyone had bad episode 1s and Laser was I think a minute behind. I don't know if it was his PB, but it was a minute behind, the mid to low 19 that you would see out of a top runner. And then he just kind of went on a rampage the rest of the run and absolutely obliterated his PB. He had a 222 and now he's got a 219 at the end of it. And I think that was something that like people expected Laser to do maybe in the long run, and I don't think people expected him to do this in a no reset rung one as first or not rung one race one of ladder league. Boom, he is like suddenly injected himself into the conversation of top 8 out of nowhere. Not really out of nowhere, but way earlier than people may have expected. And I guess like that is honestly the standout perform. Well, see, because Bricko just happened, I would almost want to call this the standout performance of like week 1. But Bricko just got like 3rd place, so it's hard to like. Flaming Laser and Bricko were on about the same level of standout performance here. Just absolutely amazing from Laser here. And then Daime and EJP Man had a very, very good battle for 2nd place. It was like, as EJP Man described it, they were trading disasters back and forth in the back half of the run. And it ends up with Daime just pulling out that 2nd place. And I think that's a very important 2nd place because Daime is now in a position where he's a rung above EJP Man, and EJP Man, right? I guess in theory, if both of them were to lose, then they would be in the bottom rung next week. But I think it's always important to make sure you're as high up on the ladder as you can be at all times, especially when you're in those rungs that are kind of towards like teetering on the line of an elimination run. You don't want to be in those positions. But I feel like there's not too much to speak on in EJP Man Daime. It was sort of just like a slight underperformance, right? Where, their PBs going in with low 222s, maybe just underperformance, maybe not slight. But yeah, Daime and EGP Man, underperforming here, both of them. I think we'll definitely see them do better in future weeks, but if they do have aspirations for like the wild card or the average, they're gonna have to start picking it up because 223s just won't cut it. I guess Saber, is there any like thoughts there, like any standout parts of this match? You'll probably talk about Laser, but I guess what are your standouts? I
Yeah, I mean, I
guess
think
go ahead. Go ahead.
I know that Laser's been practicing a ton recently, and so he's probably similar to somebody like in the LCQ with like Chess or Captain Paxo that we kind of expected to come in and maybe have significant improvements over their PBs. We haven't seen that as much with some of those runners, but for Laser, just with him being like, if you ask like who are some of the best overall Lego speedrunners, I think Laser just has to be in the conversation.
For sure.
Obviously, just like plays a variety of games, but putting more focus into TCS, I don't think this is an unexpected outcome whatsoever. Obviously, being able to do that in a race setting is really good to see, and yeah, just a standout performance. And I don't even know if I would say an underperformance from Daime and EJP. Probably not what they were hoping for, but maybe about what you would expect playing a couple minutes off of your PB in a no reset setting. So, I mean, good back and forth between them. I think that'll be a matchup that we end up seeing multiple
Yeah.
times as the league continues, especially with their times being super close. Obviously, Daime's been very active over the last year, especially lowering his time. EJP just like more recently got back into practice and learning new tricks and whatnot. So I think that's about that we're going to just continue to see as the league progresses. But like you said, one of them or both of them are definitely going to have to lock in a little bit more if they want any sort of chance to make it further into the league or even have a chance to have the wild card match.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll keep us rolling on the train here. I guess rung five. I'll let you kind of take over and what kind of happened here in rung five.
Yeah, this was I commentated this match and it was very uneventful, which once we kind of hit like the middle portion, it was pretty close between Colton and Phantom. Honestly, between all three runners, like for the first 2, 3 episodes, we were maintaining about like a 30 to 45 second gap between all three runners. But then, really, like the back half of episode 4 into episode 6 is when Colton kind of just started hitting the gas, setting Endor CG. Obviously, that's like one of, if not the hardest level in the entire
Mm-hmm.
run. Being able to do that in a no reset setting is very impressive for him. And he kind of just continued along that train and was on a pretty good pace until he got to Bespin and ended up messing up GTF, not quite hitting the spline. Cost him a little bit of time, which hurts his average a little bit, obviously with the wild card aspirations, but still, setting a pretty solid time, and ultimately, it, doesn't matter. He still gets the promotion, which is really what he probably cares about a little bit more. I would say from Phantom, probably not something he was too happy with, but not a crazy underperformance from what I would expect in a no
Mm-hmm.
reset setting. I know he's, come back to the game a little bit more recently as well. He was inactive a bit last year and has brought his PB down a decent amount, but just in a no reset setting, just not quite as strong as he would maybe hope. But I do think that he has a chance in these next couple of weeks to lock in and definitely set better times than a high 226.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping we at least see like a mid or a high 225 from him at some point in the league so that he can last a little bit longer. And then Quasar, very unfortunate. The biggest thing that happened for him was a very, very unfortunate double miss for Trash Skip. The first time missing it by going too far back, and then walked all the way back and came in to the out of bounds to attempt it again, but when jumping up, just wasn't quite hitting the transition and ended up clipping back in bounds, needing to backtrack, losing like 2.5 minutes just in that single split, which, you just take that out, he would have been right up there with Phantom. There was a portion in kind of right before that he ended up taking the lead ahead of all three of these runners out of Spaceport. Quasar was in the lead, but then after Princess and DSE, it kind of sealed his fate being multiple minutes behind the other runners. So very unfortunate. I would expect for Quasar to put up uh, like kind of like I said for Phantom, hopefully better performance. 226, 225. I think he'll be within that range. Just a really devastating mistake that set him way too far back and kind of set in stone that he was going to be getting last in that race.
Yeah, I guess my like thoughts on this performance were just like Colton. I think the expected outcome happened where Colton won and leapfrogged. I think that was the most expected leapfrog of the week. But honestly, I feel like Colton, like you like Endor CG. He actually CG'd Coruscant, played a lot of levels well, but then he also had a lot of disasters, and I almost feel like that's almost a sneak peek into how Colton might be in a tournament. I feel like he might be a very streaky runner where he's gonna have really good streaks, and then one bad level that might be a lot of time, almost mirroring maybe how Jared sometimes performs in ladder leagues. Which ultimately I think that because Colton's in such a tight battle for top 8, that might, if he doesn't make it, that might be his downfall, is that, maybe his average just isn't quite good enough, or he doesn't get quite a good enough best tournament time because he has those disasters that happen during the run. Only a few, right? You still get a good time, but, someone like Laser, who might be a little bit more consistent, or like a Justin down the line once he's derusted, it's going to be tough to overcome them without, without having like a disastrous level here and there. In terms of Phantom, I actually don't I think this was a way underperformance for the level he was going into the race, because he had just PB the day before, got like over a minute of PB. And I think like I got to catch some of the match earlier on, and I actually heard you on comms where it was like Phantom would have been right in this if it wasn't for a few huge disasters. I think it was like a missed Dooku skip.
Dooku skip, yeah.
Was it ICS maybe, or maybe it was something else? But
Definitely not ICS,
yeah,
but nothing else early game
yeah.
is coming to mind.
Where it was just, if Phantom can clean up those disasters, he would be up there. So I feel like Phantom has a good
Yeah,
ceiling, but then also it takes you, like, sometimes, it's a little shaky because he could have a week like this again in the future, which
yeah.
wouldn't really cut it if you're talking, week 3, week 4, when, elimination, he might be facing elimination then. But then again, he could put up, like, a 223, which is around, like, right around his PB, which would be good enough to compete with people in rungs above him. And then Quasar was, kind of a big surprise, and well, I should say I wasn't. I thought he was going to lose the match, but I didn't think he was going to get a 229. Where it was sort of like, was he really that far below his PB, or was it like his mental was completely gone? It's week 1, sort of idea. I'm a little worried for Quasar down the road, and I think it's really important that, well, obviously it's really important that he wins next week, of course. But I think he has to string together like 1 or 2 good weeks in a row to get himself back into okay, I'm actually have a shot here if he has top 8 aspirations, which I think I talked to him before. If he started playing well, he definitely wants to make it to top 8. But obviously being in bottom rung weeks 2 is a poor start. He's gonna have to flip it around real quick. And I guess that'll move us on here. I'll scroll us down to our final race of week 1, which I will give this one the stamp of match of the week. Saber, I'm so sad that you didn't get to witness this one live, because this one was one of the most exciting races. It like the early game was a real big back and forth, but the big standout moment was Gamer Olive hard locking in spaceport, losing 2 minutes, and
Oh
basically
wow.
seeming wiped out of the race. Like, it was a sort of idea where Y2 and Chess were playing well enough that it was like, okay, well, Olive has a huge gap, and Chess and Y2 are trading blows back and forth. All eyes were on Chess and Y2 as the race progressed. And then suddenly going into 5, it was about a minute 40 gap between Chess, who was leading, and Olive. And then I think the main focus, right, was still Chess and Y2. Y2 wasn't going to go for GTF, so could Chess hold the lead? And then we get to CCT, and suddenly Chess and Y2 both with disaster CCTs, like multiple, like over a minute time loss for both of them on CCT. And Olive, who is RTA, like behind because her loads are slow, if CCT finishes, we're like, okay, Chess is up about 12 seconds on Y2. It's going to be a really close race to Bestman. Olive split comes in. Olive is in the lead out of nowhere. The focus was all on Chess and Y2 disasters. Olive it sneakily gets in a really good CCT. Olive takes the lead into Bestman by 4 seconds over Chess. And the thing is, because Olive's RTA is so far behind the other two, she's actually visually last. And Chess, who was in the lead, was in second, and Y2 was in last, was visually in the lead. And he was the only one who did do bridge skip. Y2, very standard best spin, no GTF, gets in the Falcon, but at this point it looks like Y2 might need some sort of miracle, a disaster for both runners. And off of, he gets one of those miracles where Chess misses the GTF line, I didn't see the line in real time, but it looked like chess. I think he got first try bridge skip. It looked like it might have been enough, right? Because Olive's coming behind him. You never know what could have happened to Olive. He gets first try bridge skip, and then boom, no trigger. It's like craziness going on in the commentary booth, and then Olive coming up accidentally, like, it's one of those things where you're too low in the door and then goes back and then you reload the previous room, and then all the
Yeah.
stormtroopers are around you, and then there's a disaster
Oh,
for Olive going on, and then you're like, wait, Y2, the person who, you know, is not doing GTF might actually get away with this, and this is all while Chess is spamming across the bridge trying to kill all the troopers with R2, over on the other side, and then Olive finally gets in the end room, finally is able to set up GTF, gets it, and then everyone's like, what, we're all waiting the final time, and
yeah.
Olive pulls it off. It's just an absolute cinematic finish where no one knew who had won. Yeah, up until like the last moment. I'm gonna say race of the week. I guess there's just a breakdown where I think the performances lie. I guess like I wasn't really impressed with anyone's performance in this race, honestly. I think because they had been PBing so much, it's not like I think my expectations were a bit high, but right, if you take away a couple of disasters here and there for Chess and Y2, they'd actually be at around their PB level. And the same thing with Olive with the hard lock. So I don't think it was a particularly bad race from anyone, but you have to expect when someone, in that the level that they're at, there is just going to be some bad time losses in their race. It's hard to like have a lot of takeaways from this because of how close it was. It was, I can't really say one person overperformed or underperformed. The best thing I can do is look at the final times, and I think the thing is with Gamer Olive, this is enough to scrape away this week. But I'm a little worried about Gamer Olive's future survival in the tournament. If any 230s that come up, it's gonna have to be almost PB or better level for Olive to survive another week. Obviously, Chess and Y2. I guess before I turn it over to you here. Just want to say, great showing for them in the tournament, both making it through the LCQ. Obviously, both of them getting big PBs throughout the tournament, so that's really helped them, lower their time and up their place in the leaderboard. But, still great performance from them in the league. I guess I'll turn it over to you. Is there anything, like, I guess you didn't get to witness the race, but is there any, like, takeaways you get from the times? I know they're all so similar, it's hard to almost, like, pick something out.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing I predicted Y2 winning this race just based on his he just got a sub 230 very, very recently, and he has only ever done four finished runs or something, like five finished runs when it comes to his PBs. He's very new and has just chipped away 3 to 5 minutes at a time off of his PB all the way down to a sub 230 very quickly. Probably one of the quickest runners to get a sub 230 in recent times. Um, so I kind of had a little bit more faith than maybe I should have for him in a race setting, but to me with his rapid improvement, I wouldn't have been surprised to see a mid 228 and a PB from him. Um, but in a race setting, this is more of what I would say is the expected outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for Gamer Olive, that for her, it's been just, honestly not somebody that I was really looking too closely at, even in the LCQ, just because I hadn't kept up to date with how amazing her recent improvements and PBs had been. So kind of been an underdog story for me to be able to see this. So even making it into the second week from the LCQ, very impressive to see. And just hearing about the match, that it sounds very exciting. I'm very sad
Yes.
that I missed it live. It would have been awesome. And ultimately, even with what you were saying, Chess Wiz, if he had hit the GTF spline, he might have actually just won the match. It really came down to it, and the delay to actually get the final times in because of the RTA difference. I'm sure that anticipation was just
Yeah, it was
super super
crazy.
fun to see. So sad that I missed out, but I definitely agree with you that anybody who made it out of this rung was going to have an uphill battle in the following weeks. We just have so many powerful runners at this point that every week when you're facing elimination, it's just going to get harder and harder. So definitely an uphill battle moving forward.
Oh, I guess, and I think Y2 would be very upset if I didn't mention this. I forgot to mention one part of the match. He lost. I think he probably had the worst boulder I have ever seen in my life, or it's up there with a top three worst boulders, where the last target kept rotating to the back, and I was restreaming this and I laughed out loud about how ridiculous this boulder was. It was unbelievable. You'd have to rewatch it. I don't remember his Falcon Flight time, but obviously if he had a normal boulder, he probably would have won this match, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Just I think Y2 would I feel like it's an injustice to not mention that, but they provided the bottom rung while there isn't like a lot of takeaways because two get out and then Olive is in a huge uphill battle. They provided the best match of the entire week, an absolute cinema match. And I guess with that being said, let's move on to the power rankings because we did the
We
recap
didn't
and
talk about rung 6. Sorry to interrupt.
did we
We did
not?
skip over rung
Oh
6.
no! Oh my goodness. Okay, we're doing it in a little bit
We did.
reverse. I scrolled down and
I
didn't
should
see.
have told you earlier.
No, we're
Sorry.
all good. We'll do rung 6 and then we'll go to the power rankings. If you want to quickly chat about rung 6 because this was another good race.
It was, yeah, and I'll keep it pretty brief just so we can get moved on here. But obviously, kind of the more big picture story here is the rivalry between Coolison and Charizite that has been brewing recently, hitting back and forth with getting PBs and obviously both qualifying in the LCQ. And there's been a lot of talk throughout these
Oh
days have
yeah.
gone on about these runners. Another rivalry that I don't think that we've seen the end of, and will continue into future weeks. But as for the match itself, I mean, this really was kind of Charizite's race to win. I think a lot of people had him predicted to win, and he did have a decent lead, about 30 to 45 seconds over these other runners um, through like a lot of the race into like episode 6 and whatnot. He was just clearly ahead of everybody else. Um, and I'm checking here, just scrolling through the VOD just to see where everything changed. And it looks like it was early in episode 3, heading into Ruin was the first time that the lead changed, switching from Charizard being in first to Coolison being in first. They were actually tied leaving Kashyyyk, so it was a very, very close race. Unfortunately, Mello just had very a lot of time loss in the early game and just wasn't able to clutch back any of it. Um, Probably a little disappointed, but again, playing, just over a minute and a half off of your PB in a no reset setting, you can't be like too upset about that. And obviously, I think for Mello, just with Coolison and Charizard's recent improvements, like this is probably what a lot of people expected. I really think this was a battle between Coolison and Charizard from the very beginning. But Charizard just not able to maintain that lead he had for most of the match, and Coolison was just able to play solid and just kind of tap it in. So this is kind of what I expected. I did predict Coolison. I don't know which side of this rivalry that you're on prediction wise,
I
but
also picked Coulson, so I was happy about
yeah,
the win, my prediction points.
yeah.
Oh, but
Otherwise, yeah, I don't think there's anything crazy notable about this. This was other than like, if you're picking Charizard or Coolison, the times themselves is, pretty expected. Like you basically could, depending on if Charizard just happened to have a good run and Coolison didn't, you could just like flip, which place they got, but like the times I'm pretty sure would have stayed about the same just depending on who happened to be playing well on that given day.
yeah, I guess my thoughts on this performance when I see this, like, all the times coming in here and what happened in the race is I think Coulson's just been cooking in this ladder league. Obviously, he gets
Yeah.
a big leapfrog here, but Coulson PBs here in week one, and it's just like Coulson, I feel like, is just showing off that he's got some race consistency that could bring him further in the tournament, a lot further in the tournament than maybe people initially thought. And, like, I know those under overs I guess now when I look at Coulson's, I'd be like, I'm looking under because he's looking really good, and I know he has a really tough
Yeah.
matchup next week, but he still will be guaranteed. Like it's not an elimination rung, and I feel like if he does go down to the elimination rung, he still would be favored with against whoever he's down there with right now. I think Coulson off to a great start. Charizard, obviously, I think he is one of the like I said before, he's like such a like sporadic runner where he'll do really good and then really bad and really good and really bad, and I feel like he's really swung by emotion and I feel like it's still very important that he got second place because, right, Mello gets third and now is facing elimination while Charizite could be, is almost in a, battle for like a top two and obviously the win, but could just be in rung four next week while Mello could be out of the tournament a whole week prior just because, that second versus third place difference in that race. I think, yeah, just, Charizite coming out with second is more important than maybe winning. Obviously, Coulson got a leapfrog, and Charizite would want that as well. But I think it's just important that he promotes himself. And now Mello, I guess this quickly speak on Melo. This is probably what Melo would consider an underperformance, especially because like you mentioned the early game faults that he may have had. And Melo's had a couple PB pace runs, outside of ladder league. So I definitely think that Melo will have a shot in the next week to, survive. But it's just an unfortunate position to be in considering losing, round 6, week 1. And I guess I'll transition us over to the power rankings because obviously it always happens. The recap goes a lot longer than I always expect. But I'll start with the bottom 9, which I guess it'll be a little bit less than 9 because after this week we say goodbye to Chess and Y2. I'm not sure in the future weeks if everyone who gets eliminated will just automatically be in the bottom of the power rankings. I guess if there's like a shock elimination, I don't know. We'll see as it goes. But I'll start talking about the people in the ladder, obviously saying goodbye to Chess and Y2 here. But we'll start with, which is conveniently the bottom rung here in my power rankings, Olive 19, Melo 18, Quasar 17. As you can see, Olive is, I think it's hard to put Olive over anyone currently in Ladder League who's still in. Olive's going to need an extremely good race to be able to stay in the ladder. I think there's no really contest on why Olive is 19. Then you have Melo at 18, which I think is also kind of a reasonable position. I did have Charizite below him in the previous week, but I think with the Charizite recent PB, obviously him winning and probably having a higher potential than Melo, I think it's fair to, bump Charizite up here. And then you have Quasar, who kind of was a big surprise in week 1, where he was, I believe, 15th. As you can see, the change is 2 down, where Quasar, had a 229 kind of shocking performance, and now he's in the bottom rung, where he is favored to survive. But I can't, I almost like Charizard with the 227. It's hard for me to justify putting Quasar over Phantom, who he just lost to, and then Charizard, who got a 2-minute better run. And Charizard's PB is approaching Quasar. So I think this is kind of my bottom 3, and it is the bottom 3 in the bottom rung. I guess, Saber, for the bottom sort of 3, 4 places, I guess how would you order them if you were to make any changes to mine or keep them the same?
I think the only thing I disagree with is that I would swap Charizite and Quasar.
Mm-hmm.
Watching Quasar's run and seeing a 2.5 minute mistake in DSE that would have given him a much more solid time that would have competed with Charizite, and also their PBs are about a minute apart, with Quasar having a lower 223 compared to Charizite with a high 223. I think I would give Quasar the slight edge. He just happened to have a
Mm-hmm.
really huge disaster mistake and not a great performance. But obviously, it's going to be very close between those runners. But other than that, I definitely agree with the bottom portion of the ranking.
Yeah, and I think that Charizite versus Quasar could be a potential future matchup we see in the elimination round, so they might have to fight each other to, maybe even stay alive in this tournament. And then I guess I'll kind of go to the top of this grouping, which I think I'll kind of separate Daime above these runners right now, but then Phantom and Coulson. And I believe, Phantom obviously has, I think, a little bit of a higher floor than Charizard. I think Charizard, you can argue, maybe has a higher ceiling than Phantom, but Phantom, I think, is a overall more consistent runner. I think you can rely on him a little bit more in a race right now than Charizard. And obviously they'll be matching up this week, so it'll be very interesting to see how that goes. And then I think it's unjust to not put Coulson at the top of this little grouping here. And he has moved himself up from a pre-LCQ position of, I have to think about it for a second, 16th up to 14th in the power rankings. I guess I could have looked at the change, but I guess I didn't really remember his initial seeding. But yeah, he was initially seeded 16. He's up to 14 in the power rankings. And I think Coulson is kind of the big mover from that LCQ group. And I guess before we talk about Daime and above, do you kind of agree with the Phantom Coulson being at 15, 14?
Yeah, no, I have no questions there. Nothing I would change. I think Coolison has been solidifying himself as deserving to have the respect that he's been getting from everybody, the support that he's been getting with his stellar performance so far. So of this bottom kind of grouping of runners, he definitely deserves to be at the top.
Yeah, and I guess to keep in mind, I'll move on to the next graphic, but I think I'm going to keep Daime in this conversation, right? He's going to be at 13, but I do want to just show, because I think I kind of group him in with the next set of runners here. Well, I should almost say with EJP Man right now. Wii Super is a really hard one to rank right now, but with EJP and Daime, both kind of with a really close race this week, and actually Daime did come out against EJP Man ahead, but I think I put EJP Man slightly ahead of Daime because I think EJP Man has a little bit better race consistency than Daime. I think he has like tournament experience from OG, obviously OG tournaments. Daime a little bit more recent tournament experience, but I almost feel like EJP Man is a little bit more of a consistent runner. Daime is more of a sporadic runner, like the Charzites, like the Jareds, and I almost feel like that hurts his ranking a little bit. And I'm a little nervous that Daime might have a really bad week that could almost like he's gonna have some tough weeks coming up where it's gonna be a do or die for him, maybe even an elimination run. And I don't know if I trust him right there right now until I see maybe a good performance from him or a PB outside of the ladder. But once again, EJP Man, I can't really put him. He goes down another spot in the ranking. I can't justifiably, put him up anywhere or even keep him above someone like Justin or Wazip because he also got a 223, and there is definitely some question marks with EJP Man. I guess just for the EJP Man Daime section, would you rank him the same way, or would you maybe even throw him above someone like a Justin, Wazip, or Colton after week one?
think I'd keep them in these spots. The only thing that I'm worried about with EJP Man is actually God Fraud, which I know he more recently learned and has felt very nervous about, specifically going into Ladder League. And so that went well for him within the first week here. No major disasters. Obviously, we've seen, a lot of random single lap misses or whatever, but no disaster in his first match. But it's a trick that Daime has put a lot more time into since Daime's, he was there when the trick was founded and
Mm-hmm.
when it was revealed to everybody. So I think that's like the one thing is just like from a race perspective. I think overall, yeah, he has the good race consistency, but some of these newer tricks could cause some issues. That's kind of my only hesitation with it, but I do like this placement.
And now on to maybe the most controversial section of the ladder. I think I'll group this Colton and Wii Super group together, or Colton 2 Wii Super group. I have Justin moving down 2 spots, and obviously this is a big jump, right? Justin in the 11, right? He's the 8 seed. He's three, or one, well, Laser Colton, 3 runners already have jumped him from the initial tournament seeding after just 1 week. And I think obviously 226 is going to hurt your power rankings a lot, especially because this is very recency biased, these power rankings. But I'm going to put, obviously, I can't watch week one, and even though I think Justin had the potential to get a good time, I can't have Wazit beat him by 2 or 3 minutes and then not put him above Wii Super. And then Colton also with a little bit of a shaky race, but I think that Colton with those CGs, a couple of really good splits in there, kind of showed off his level, and I think it's a little bit above where Wazip is. Well, I think Wazip's a more consistent runner, and I think has definitely the potential to jump Colton in the future. I think it's still reasonable to put Colton above Wazip at the moment. It's hard for me to justify putting Justin over the other two at the moment. I guess of this next grouping of 3, and maybe you can include Laser EJP Man if you want. Do you kind of like this Justin Colton Wazip region of the power rankings that I have here?
Tough. I honestly think I would put Justin above Wazip. Again, a lot of Justin's performance can be chalked up to like 3+ minutes in
Mm-hmm.
pod race. So I think you take that into account, and he's closer, if not ahead of the time that Wazip set. So I would probably switch those two, but otherwise I'm in agreement with the list. I think Colton, especially with recent PBs and whatnot, and a solid first performance, other than some pretty big disasters for him. I think he does have the potential to play at close to like a 220 level, which is something that we would maybe that's the level we would kind of expect Justin to play around while derusting. And Laser absolutely deserves to have this level of respect. I think it's even possible that we see more PBs out of him as the league continues. So, um, other than swapping Wii Super and Wazip for me personally, the rest of it I definitely agree with.
And I guess I'll give Laser his own little segment here because of his crazy performance. And I guess we did talk about it on the recap. I don't think I can justifiably put him ahead of anyone in the top 7 right now. Right? He only beat Jared's time in the top 7, and I think Jared is someone who is very strong. Like he can, if he's having a good start of the race, he can just perform strongly throughout, and he can get really good times. I don't think I can justifiably put him over anyone else, especially because his time didn't beat anyone else's besides Jared. So, but he obviously going up 5 spots in my power rankings, a really, really big surprise week one from Laser for me. I think he's justifiably projected top 8 right now in the power rankings. And I think, yeah, 219.27. that average, that's going to help his average tremendously over everyone else below him in this who might be fighting for that 8 seed got 223 or worse, right? So that's going to help him out tremendously in the average category and in the overall just fastest time. All right, and now I'll continue on to like the next grouping. I'll move on to the next page. You'll have to keep me in mind at number 7. But move on to our top 7/6 here. I said it backwards, so there's no memes. So I put myself at 7. I think you could maybe say, I think people could say, maybe Jared's below you after that week 1 performance just because he had a bad performance. But I still think I slightly believe in Jared a little bit more than myself just because I think his ceiling's a bit higher than me right now. Obviously, I'll talk about my own performance. I'm happy about it. I mean, there's definitely... I could critique it very much. I could sit here for an hour and critique my performance in week 1. But I did end up winning the race by a large margin, get a 2:19.11. So I was within a minute of my PB, which is not bad at all. But I think there's better things to come for me. I don't think I can put myself above Jared. And then that being said, I didn't get a better time than any of the other people besides Jared. So that's why I put myself there. And then I think, given that Jared did get a 220, I can't give him extreme respect and put him above anyone who got the 218 or better. So I have Jared here at the 6. And then I kind of just have the order of the race that just happened here at the 3, 4, and 5. It's hard for me to justify any jump over Zach because of the level I think Zach is at above everyone else right now. But I guess I'll let you, before we mention Dragon, who was qualified, I'll let you talk about this whole... I mean, this is a lot going on in this section from me all the way up to Zach. But I guess maybe say what order you would have right now for this section. Because obviously a lot of changes happen on my rankings.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, this is probably like the biggest thing that I've kind of been going back and forth on. I guess I'll start by saying I agree with 7 through 5 with you, Jared, and Anorak, but these kind of top 3 runners that are about to face up against one another this next week is the biggest thing that my mind has been going back and forth on after Bricko just got a PB with a 217 and an incredible performance. I think I'm still going to give it to Zach just based on how active he's been recently and setting records. Just a very high level runner that you can kind of rely on to play very, very well. Just didn't seem too locked in first week, but I don't think he wants to wait too much longer before qualifying. So I think he is going to end up winning the match. And honestly, I go back and forth between Bricko and Evan because I really think that on any given day, either of them could do what Bricko just did.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think I would probably side more with Evan, so I'd probably switch the two of them. Again,
Mm-hmm.
just due to the experience and the history and whatnot. Um, I think Evan is on the cusp of probably getting a really solid PB as well, just like Bricko just did. So he's kind of the one that I have a little bit more faith in getting second place as we go into this match. So I'd probably swap the two of them, but otherwise I agree with everybody else.
Yeah, and I guess I think my reasoning on keeping Zach at 2 is mainly because, yes, he did get like a 2.8 mid 218, which is not great, but you take out that minute in Coruscant on top of an already just meh run from him. That's
Yeah.
already a 2 mid 217, which would be better than everyone else besides Bricko and Dragon right now. And it's hard for me. Some people might be like, I'd move Bricko to 2, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we're quite there yet. And then I guess I do want to acknowledge Dragon here. I move him to number 1. Phenomenal performance. What? I don't remember the exact final time. It was like 2:17:24, I think. And then if he didn't have those like weird OBS issues, he probably would have PB'd, which would probably be a better run than Bricko. And Dragon is just such a fast runner at the game, and I think I shouldn't just call him a fast runner. I don't think that's justifiable because I've been like, I guess my notion on him in the videos lately has been like he's really fast, but he's not as consistent as the top runners. I think he is a very consistent runner. Like I think he is a very consistent runner. I think he's like top 3 consistent runners. I just think he has the skill ceiling for him is the highest, so that's why I kind of like talk about that more than his consistency. But I don't want to push his consistency to the side. I think he's a top 3 consistency, number 1 fastest. I think he's definitely the number 1, and I don't think anything really will change that. I don't know, right? I don't know if I'm going to keep the people cemented at their rank once they qualify. That's going to be something for future recaps I'll decide on, but I think it would be unjust to not put him at number 1 after what he just did week 1. And I guess
Yeah.
that'll move us on from our power rankings. I think I'm not even going to ask you. I think you would completely probably agree with Dragon at number
Yeah.
one. And let's start talking about our predictions here for week number 2. And I guess I'll quickly intro each of these races before we do the actual pick. And I'll click on the picks as well, so we can kind of see the future rungs as well. We don't need to talk. We don't want to talk about that. It would take way too long. But the Zach Brick, or let's. Do you want to start from the bottom or the top? What are you feeling?
I think we go bottom to top here.
Okay, okay. So let's talk about rung 6, the elimination rung, which is going to be Quasar, Mellow, and Olive. And I think going in, right, Quasar is going to be the favorite just because his PB is 3+ minutes better than Mellow's. It's I think 5 minutes better than Olive's. So I think it's hard to not say Quasar is the favorite. Obviously, after the 229 though, you start to question if he has another performance like that, he's not going to win. He's going to have to step it up. Obviously, you mentioned that DSE disaster, so I feel like there's already like a 2.5 minute cut that can be made just by avoiding that. But it's still going to be a tough race because Mellow, right, has been on those PB paces. Olive, I just, as much as I would like to give her a shot, I just think she's going to finish last in this race. I don't really see her, fighting for that first. Maybe she has a surprise second, but I can't see her fighting for first place in this one to survive. I think my pick here is going to be Quasar, and I simply think the PB gap is just a little too much for Mello to overcome. I think Mello's on the rise, and Quasar's been at a little bit of a lull in terms of the gameplay recently, just because he hasn't played as much before the ladder. But I think that gap is just going to be a little too much for Mello to overcome. So I guess my picks for this race would be Quasar 1, Mello 2, Olive 3. And actually, I'll toss it over to you. And actually, what I'll do is quickly note down yours, so then we can create another theory bracket. So I'm not tabbing back and forth all the time. But you can start talking about what you think is going to happen in this race.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you said for ranking wise. I think Quasar is going to have a much more solid performance and hopefully avoid any big disasters and should have a pretty easy victory in comparison to these other runners. And then similarly, the gap between him and Mello, I think that Gamer Olive, she just doesn't quite have the skill set and the experience that's necessary to beat somebody like Mello, who didn't have the performance that he probably hoped to in the first week. So even if he just locks in a little bit more, it would take a really, really strong effort from Olive to be able to even compete with Mello. So I think it's going to be in that order. Quasar first, Mello second, and Gamer Olive third. Obviously, all that matters for these runners is getting first place since the other two will be eliminated. So I really think this is just Quasar's match to lose. Otherwise, he should just be able to lock it in and stay in the league for another week.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement with that. So I think we can kind of move on. I'll fill it out so then we can talk about leapfrogs at the end, and I'll note down any changes you have so we can go over maybe your potential leapfrogs right at the end. But another just unique rung here, EJP Man Phantom Charizite. And I feel like that's just like you're picking people from all over the ladder and you put them in one race, and I feel like rung 4 is the same way. That's actually a crazy one, maybe even more crazy than rung 5 here. But this is a very important rung, right? Just, I think similar to last week where the difference between second and third here is so massive. You're fighting for elimination versus you're in rung 4 and you're not fighting for elimination. You're also, potentially going to be promoted and getting into that would be week 4. So I think a very crucial rung here. You have EJP Man, who's got the best PB out of all of them. Phantom, who's not too far behind, and Charizard also in that same range as Phantom. I think it's going to be a really close race. I think this is a sneaky, really good race. My pick, though, I think Charizite is... it's tough to pick. I think this is a little bit of a shocker. I think Charizite is going to have a good week. He's going to have a really good week. And I think he's going to surprise people and actually win this race. And I don't think it's going to be because of a EJP Man and Phantom disaster. I think it's going to be because Charizite just has a good run. He finally puts one together this week. I'm going to go Charizite first. I'm going to go EJP Man gets second, maybe with a similar performance to last week. I know this is probably a bit of a shocking pick, picking Charizite to win, who actually might be the favorite to lose. I'm going to go with the upset pick here. Charizite, EJP Man with a second and a respectable performance, but I think Charizite has a spike week. And then Phantom with a little bit of an underperformance again, that maybe puts him in a scare in the bottom rung in rung 5. So I'm going to go Charizite EJP Man, then Phantom. And I'll let you take over on what you think is going to happen here. I imagine you probably won't be picking that.
Yeah, I'm maybe more in line. Well, I don't know. I don't know kind of how the general consensus is on these runners, but I will be taking EJP Man getting first place in this race for me personally. I think even if he puts up a similar performance to week one, that it will be tough for these other runners to beat. But I also think that he has a higher ceiling that we could even see some PBs happen during this league. So I'm gonna take him in the one, and then I'm gonna have Charizite as the runner up. And just with the inconsistencies that we've seen from Phantom, I am going to put him in third place. But we've also seen a lot of inconsistencies with Charizite, not only with his first match, but even just talking about the LCQ. I mean, 41 BBJ misses is
Yeah,
is
that is
not what you
crazy.
would like
That
to
is
see.
crazy.
So I think he just suffers from maybe it's getting nervous or it's just kind of the mental struggles of being in a race setting. So I don't think he'll be able to eke it out compared to EJP Man, but I don't have too much confidence that Phantom's going to be able to lock in and have a really, really solid run. So I'll go EJP Man first, Charizite second, and Phantom third.
All right, so I'll put in my picks for now. I have yours noted down, so we can look at your theory bracket real quick, so we can just talk about leapfrogs in the end, and that will bring us to our next rung here, which is I think the wild. Like, if you told me this would be a rung in the tournament at the beginning, I'd be like, what? And it's not. It's like the third rung from the bottom. It's not even like you would Coolison, Daime, Wii Super in the same rung, and the fact of the matter is, Wii Super had the worst time out of these three in week one. This is just wild to think about. This race, I mean, you can't say that he's not the favorite though going in just because, right? Take away the Potter's disaster, and he goes from the worst time out of these two or out of these three to the best. So I think it's hard to not put Justin as the favorite. Daime, I think once again he could have a really good week out of nowhere, but then again he could also have a really bad week. I don't. It's hard to rank Daime because of that inconsistency that he has. And then Coulson, who has just been killing it in ladder league lately, we're putting the red hot Coulson up against a titan of TCS, and then we super, of course, as well in the race. I meant, a titan in TCS and Daime. I think if I go prediction wise here, I can't say that Justin's not gonna beat one of these two. I think it's too much of an edge for Justin here. I think there's no way he puts up as bad of performances last week. I think he'll kind of redeem himself from last week. I think he'll put on a performance that is like a 220. Now, I don't think he's quite there going to be at 219. I think he's going to do like a 220. And then suddenly everyone's like, okay, Justin's back. I think Justin's going to get first here. I'm going to go for the red. I'm going to go ride the red hot Coulson here as second place and a promotion. And then Daime with a surprise bottom rung here early on. And it's going to be a test for him in the bottom rung early on. But I think he's going to have a little bit of a surprise loss here. So I'll get your picks and then I'll input mine. What do you think is
Yeah.
going to happen here?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna just keep it very standard. I think Wii Super's gonna win it pretty easily. I think he's gonna do more practice and lock in a good time. And then I'm gonna put Daime in second and Coulison in third. Even just looking at the performances, obviously Coulison having a time like right around Daime within about 10 seconds of one another. But for Coulison, that's a PB, and for Daime, that's a time that he can put up in a no reset setting because that's 2 minutes off of his PB. So I think in order for Coulison to have a shot at beating Daime, he probably needs to PB again, in my opinion. And I think as time goes on, we'll see a better performance from Daime as he's becoming a little bit more experienced, hopefully getting over like the tournament nerves. So I'm just gonna go with kind of more of a standard issue. We super first, Daime in second, and Coulison in third.
All right, got that noted. I'll put in mine, and then that will take us, once I enter these, to another very unique rung, because there was definitely some leapfrogs that had to happen to get this one to match up to happen week two. Anorak, Wazip, Colton. And I think it's very clear to mention that Anorak is going to be a huge favorite in this. I think this is the biggest favorite of any of the races this weekend. I think you can't say Justin just because his crazy week one performance. There's still question marks, but Anorak, there's no question marks. I think this Anorak going into the tournament, maybe some people might have questioned like, Anorak doesn't have the most tournament experience like Bricko and Evan. Well, I guess Bricko doesn't really have that much either, but he doesn't have the most tournament experience. Maybe there's some question marks. Will he be able to perform at a top level? And he just proved that he definitely could in week one. And I see no reason why not. I mean, I'll just say it straight up. There's no reason to not pick him in first place in this race. I think a disaster run could happen for Anorak, and he would still be beating Colton and Wasip's PBs. So I'm gonna definitely put Anorak in first, and then that brings up, I think, the way more interesting aspect of this matchup is who's gonna get second, because you're looking at Colton, lower seed, better PB, who has been a little bit hotter lately than Wasip, but then Wasip and Colton's more of a streaky runner versus Wasip, who I think is more of a solid runner, more consistent runner. And I think I'm gonna stick with what works in tournaments. I'm gonna stick with consistency. And I'm gonna go Wasip here, and I think we're gonna see a Wasip performance that is maybe near PP or maybe even a PP in this match. I'm gonna go Colton has a little bit of a sort of performance like he did week one where there's some random disaster. So I'm gonna go Anorak first, Wasip second, Colton third. Then I'll turn it over to you for what you think is gonna happen in this very unique run.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited for this match, mainly for the Wazip Colton. Just with recently with Colton improving his PB, I think that's going to be a fun race to see them go head to head. I agree with you that Anorak is the clear first place pick here at winning this match. I am going to disagree though with Wazip and Colton. I actually think with Colton's recent improvement, as time goes on, he's gonna lock in and not have as many disasters. And if he can maintain some of that consistency he's had in the second half of his first week, then he's gonna play at a very high level. So I'm actually gonna take Colton in second, thinking that he could potentially put up like a 220 or 221 in a no reset setting. And I'm going to take Wazip in third, expecting that he'll probably play close to what he did in week one.
Right, and I guess this match isn't as punishing to get third as well because you're still like, right, you're gonna get a rung four next week that you're probably gonna be a favorite in, and you're not in an elimination run. But obviously, of course, you want to be, like I mentioned, the highest in the ladder as possible, but it's not as punishing of a rung as, for example, rung four or rung five. So I'll put in mine for now, and then we'll talk about rung two, which is going to be another very very interesting race. I think some I mean, Jared, who I think was definitely would be pre-tournament would be the favorite here, but then drops down with a bad time week one, and then Laser, who would definitely be like the lowest favorite, like way below me and Jared pre-tournament, gets a PB that's very very big PB for him, and suddenly, and it's in a race, so right, you can't even say, oh, maybe it's not a no reset thing. Laser puts himself very much in the conversation of this race. Personally, and then I guess myself, who kind of just put on like, I think a lot of people, and I kind of can disagree with it, especially with my power rankings. I put on a performance that doesn't really move me up or down too much, right? It wasn't outstanding, it wasn't bad, it was definitely solid, but I wouldn't move myself up or down necessarily with that performance. Talking about predictions, and I know this, if you watch my videos, this is kind of the standard which I go to, is I'm gonna believe in myself, and I always think you should believe in yourself, and even if you have me, like if someone else is doing a prediction video and you're playing me and you pick you over me, it's like I totally understand because I believe you should believe in yourself. I know Zach doesn't believe that. He thinks about he believes in emotional hedging, so he picks the other person. But I'm gonna believe myself. I'm gonna pick myself to win, and I feel like it's I can't really go against myself, especially in a close race. I want to bet on myself. So I'm gonna go myself to win. I'm gonna go Jared in second, and I would love to put Laser in there as a potential second place, but I think Jared's just a little bit too good for Laser right now. And the thing is, Laser had a really good performance week one. It would be a surprise for him to I guess we'll see, right? Can he keep up the 219s? I think he'll dip a little bit week two, maybe a 220, which I think is 220 is going to be a little bit too far to reach for someone like me and Jared. And I'll turn it over to you. What you think is going to happen in this race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just in agreement with you. I definitely have you as winning. I mean, I think it'll
You
be
don't need a
close
glaze. You don't need a
between you
glaze.
and.
You could be honest.
Yeah, I truly think that. I think that Jared is gonna still probably show a little bit of the tournament nerves, especially after his success last season, and after your solid week one performance. I just think that it'll be a good race and it'll be a close race, but I do think that you'll end up getting first, and then Jared in second. And even with Laser's recent PB, it's hard not to still put him in third place. He would have to perform at an even higher level, I think, to compete with you and Jared, who I think both of you will put up times better than you did in the first week, or maybe, similar to what you got. But for Laser to compete with that, he would need to get another PB, and I just don't think that that's
Yeah.
realistic to happen 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, here, I'll mark that in here. And then that takes us to I mean, this has got to be the race of the week. I mean, it's hard to deny when you see three of the biggest names in TCS history up in here in race one: Zach, Rico, and Evan. And oh my, this one is so hard to pick. I have to think. I mean, go. I guess I'll
Yeah.
quickly preview it, and while I do that, I'll try to think of what I even think of it because I haven't even had a second to like fathom like what could happen in this match. I think Zach he has to be the favorite going in, right? He has been that consensus number one, right, for a while. Obviously, Dragon beating him last week, maybe overtaking that spot a little bit from Zach, but you still have to be like, Zach is really good at this game. He has had record for all this time for a reason, and I feel like it's hard to even like pick against him. But yeah, before I pick, definitely the favorite. Then going in, you almost have to say Bricko might be like you said, Bricko and Evan could be putting up that really good performance on any day. But given that Bricko actually did it, and Evan struggled a little bit in that late game, which is more of his strength in the past, I think I would slightly favor Bricko over Evan going into the match. Mind you, is that what I'm gonna actually pick here? I think I'm gonna go with. Oh boy, I think I'm gonna go with a little bit of a surprise here. I think it's going to be a bounce back week for E Roadhouse, and I think he's going to bounce back in a big way and get the 2 seed here. I think this is going to be a surprising pick for me, not
Wow.
picking Zach. But once again, I think right Zach is better. I would rank him as the favorite, but I think the margins I would rank him as a favorite is not that big, right? I think like if you look at like lower rungs, I think there's a lot bigger gaps between people when you call someone the favorite or not. I think Eros has a bounce back week in a big way, and I think he's going to put up like a near PB time, like maybe even a PB time. I think he's going to do what Bricko did last week, this week, and I think Zach's going to come in with another second place, another top rung, stand in for Zach here. A shocker that he might get to the 3 seed, and I think Bricko is going to be up against two Titans here. He can put up a high 217, which is near his old PB, and I still think that he might not be able to win with that in this race. I think it's going to be an extremely high caliber race. I think everyone's going to be in super high preparation mode for this. And I think they already had locked in that Sunday night window. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm squinting. May 24th, 3 p.m. I think they have already locked in that primetime window. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of prep done from all of them. I think it's going to be the highest level caliber race that we've seen yet. I'm going to go with Evan, Zach, Rico. And I'll turn it over to you for what you think this race is going to turn out to be.
Yeah. I kind of have to, as a prerequisite, I have to have a little bit of faith in Evan to at least get first or second, just based on the over/under on his placements overall. Had him on the under for seed 3.5. So I need him to either win or stay in the top rung. I don't quite think that he's going to win this week, but honestly, anybody could have any combination of this ranking, and like I wouldn't be
Yeah, it's
upset. Like,
totally justified.
yeah,
Like no matter what you predict, every ranking is justified.
right. Yeah, and even like when predictions actually come out, and depending on the point values, like I'm sure it'll be very, very even, but I might just go for like a points pick because I could see any of these runners winning the race. But for me, I am gonna have Zach winning the race, getting seed 2, and then Evan in second, and Bricko getting third place.
Here, I guess I'll input my own here, and then I'll quickly, before we wrap up, I'll go over just leapfrog potentials here, and then maybe we can even pick a leapfrog. Oops, I picked Evan to win. Obviously, no leapfrogs in rung 1 or rung 2. In terms of my picks, I'll quickly go over. Do I think Quasar is going to leapfrog over EJP Man? I don't think so. Do I think Charizite will be leapfrogging over Coolison? That's an interesting one, but I don't think so. I think Coolson's going to continue staying red hot. Well, actually, I did predict Charizite with a spike performance. So, you know what? I gotta go. This is crazy. Charizite to win. Charizite to leapfrog. This is crazy. I feel like, if Charizite does win, he's going to need a really good performance. And that would probably be enough to leapfrog if, Coolison were to get second. Justin, that's interesting. Against Wazip, I think Justin, right, is going to have that statement. I know I said Wazip will be round PB, but, right, his PB is a high 221. A 220 for Justin, that statement match back, I think he does leapfrog. Actually, I think Justin's gonna be a leapfrog, and then Anorak and Jared. I think Anorak, and I think Anorak is gonna be a little bit like not not unfocused, but I think I guess this is probably a message to Anorak if he's watching. Make sure you focus in on this entire race because you're racing rung 2 as well. But I think that Jared is going to put up a better time, and Anorak's just going to have a little bit of like a slightly worse performance than last, like a mid 219, low 219, I should say. And Jared puts up something similar, very close, but not quite a leapfrog. So I'm going to go with a leapfrog from Justin and Charzite. And let me pull up my notes real quick for you, so I can make sure you have, same as the bottom, you have EJP Man, Charizard Phantom, Justin Diamond Coulson, and then you have Colton over Wazip. Okay, I guess for you, if you want to just, can you see my screen scrolling around?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess, do you think Charizite will be? I'll let you talk. I'll let you go up there. Quasar, you can take over.
Yeah, I already looked at it, so I kind of know where I think the leapfrogs may happen. So I have Quasar winning run 6, and I actually do think that he will leapfrog Charizite in the rung ahead of him. Again, I think Charizite, with some of the inconsistencies and the major disasters that have happened, I just think that if Quasar plays a little bit closer to PB level, we could easily see Charizite getting a 225, 226 performance. Even if it's better than this first week here, I still think there's a good chance that Quasar will just perform at a higher level than that.
Mhm.
And then I don't think we're going to see a leapfrog in rung 5 from EJP Man. I just don't think he quite has the ability to do that against Daime. Although I do think, like we talked about before, that it's going to be close between those two. But I don't have EJP Man leapfrogging him. And then I do think that We Super is going to be leapfrogging rung 3 against Colton in the second spot. Even if you switch that up and went Wazip, like I think Justin has a good chance of leapfrogging either way, no matter who ends up getting second and third. And then I actually do have Anorak leapfrogging all of rung 2, or specifically, I guess, Jared and Flaming Laser. Um, just after a very solid first week performance. Obviously, I think you guys will perform at a very high level, but I could see it being the case again where you guys are putting up like high 218, low 219, and it's a very close race. And I see Anorak being able to perform like, I mean, he's very close to PB level
Yeah.
here with this performance. So that's definitely the one that I'm the least confident in. Looking at this bracket, leapfrog wise, the other two I'm feeling pretty good about, but I do kind of have just like Anorak just throwing it out there that he's just going to continue to have stellar performances and is going to leapfrog all the way back into the first rung for next week. So those are my three that I think are going to happen going into this next week.
It's awesome because we both predicted 3 leapfrogs, I believe, for week 2. There was 3 leapfrogs in week 1. Everyone is leapfrogging around the bracket right now. I think it's an awesome feature of the bracket, and obviously the main thing is you can get out of that bottom rung if you are stuck in there, which I think you have Quasar doing this week, or in your predictions. Quasar actually getting
Yeah.
out of there with the leapfrog. That would reignite his tournament completely. I feel like, yeah, bottom rung, you not only have to win, leapfrogging out just rejuvenates you into this tournament. And I think we'll see super key leapfrogs later on in the tournament, potentially out of that bottom rung. But yeah, I think that will wrap it up for this recap. I think I got to go over basically everything I wanted to. I don't know if you have any final words, Saber, but I think I got everything through that I wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very exciting season of Ladder League so far. I know everybody has been putting in a lot of time and effort to it. So, from like a staff perspective, it's been amazing to see it all come together and actually flow very well. Very happy from that front, but also just from a community perspective, it's been awesome to see everybody coming together. So, it's been a massive W. I'm excited to just continue down this amazing journey with everybody, and also like the excitement of a top 8 in person. We didn't really touch on it, but like, you know, Dragon getting the first seed, like we know that he's coming to the top 8 playoffs. That's just like such an exciting idea that we can already start to look forward to. So it's more than just like, just these matches in this tournament, it's just like the community and the excitement has been really fun to see.
Oh yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, I guess just to mention, yeah, Dragon first one, he will be flying out to the United States to be playing in that first in-person top 8. It will be amazing. Obviously, still 7 more spots up for grabs. And I know we didn't really touch on the wild card too much this week, which is going to be a big factor in later weeks, but that will be talked about more when there's less matches to recap and predict. There's just Saber, you got the big load of doing all the week 1 and you got the biggest one here to cover. So you did a great job on that. Thank you so much for coming in as my guest. And
Of
I guess
course.
that will transition us. I will see you guys next week for the next week recap with another new guest. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next one.